Whether you live in the northern or southern hemisphere, simply turning on the news is more than enough to get the blood of any person boiling. In a day and age where everything is created to cause division, few things can unite nations like the Rugby World Cup. From fierce enemies during local competitions to all-out war when our favourite teams play local derbies, everything changes the moment someone puts on that national jersey. You can call it what you want, from loyalty to patriotism, shivers get sent down our spines, seeing our national team exit the tunnel and enter the field of play. But this only happens but a few times each year. However, every 4 years we are blessed by a moment in time when everything seems to stand still. Welcome to the Rugby World Cup. A moment when time seemed to freeze, beers feel colder, and bitter enemies become best mates. The familiar sounds of national anthems reverberate through the stadium, each leading to the pinnacle when the first kickoff takes place. Finally, the tension is broken by thunderous roars from the crowd, and we spur on our national team to finally hoist the most coveted trophy in rugby and prove once and for all who is the best rugby nation on planet Earth. Join us today as we take you on an emotional rollercoaster of heartbreak, defeat, and moments of triumph that have solidified legacies, created new heroes, and ultimately united nations of war that many thought would never be possible. Dating back to 1987, a conglomerate of nations decided that it would follow suit to competitions such as the FIFA World Cup and Olympic Games. The idea was to revolutionise the sport by hosting a tournament that would pit the best of the best against one another, creating an all-out war where the victors would take home the spoils and bragging rights, at least for the next 4 years. The first iteration of this showdown of champions was to be hosted by Australia and New Zealand. 16 nations were invited to apply their trade, and one would ultimately stand out as the best team in the world. Hosted by the Anzac nations, the World Cup gained massive support from a huge 600,000 people taking the journey down under and visiting the stadiums. Another 300 million viewers tuned in from home to support their national teams, succeeding all expectations in a time when only a few people could afford a television. As the smoke cleared and the battle lines were drawn for the first game, it was the host nation New Zealand who would run riot on a weaker Italian side. The All Blacks would run out 70-6 victors at the iconic Eden Park Stadium in Auckland. But the real achievement was the triumphal rugby played. New Zealand went on to win what would become the iconic Webb Ellis Trophy, 29 points to 9 over a French team that no one would expect to make the final. But this would be only the beginning, and the effect of the Rugby World Cup would become bigger and change the landscape of nations to a degree not even Nostradamus would have predicted. Whilst the 1991 Rugby World Cup was no small feat, it had a limited impact on the landscape of rugby. The Wallabies had been dominating World Rugby the year prior and managed to beat arch-enemies England in a brutal battle at Twickenham. But our journey begins 3 years after the second Rugby World Cup in a small nation at the southern tip of Africa. You might have heard of the Springboks and never thought to yourself that this nation was never part of the iconic World Cup, but this is what happened. During a brutal apartheid regime at the latter end of the 20th century, South Africa had become sanctioned by many nations. The Southern African country was never invited to participate in the Rugby World Cup, but after the democratic election of Nelson Mandela in 1994, all of this was about to change. Still divided in opinion throughout different cultures, 1994 and early 1995 would still see some form of division among the various cultures that represent the Rainbow Nation. However, this was all about to change. Whilst no hope was given to a South African team so far removed from reality, the unthinkable happened on May 25 inside a packed Newlands Stadium in Cape Town. The Springboks overcame a Wallaby onslaught to defeat the reigning champions by 27 points to 18 in the opening game. This would set the stage for what was to come. After making it through the pool stages and narrowly avoiding defeat against a powerful French team in the semi-finals, the stage was set for what would cement the Springbok legacy and bring together a nation in a way that was last seen when the United States won the Second World War. It was a sunny day, winter's day, in the middle of Johannesburg on June 24, 1995, when Madiba magic would be on full display. The All Blacks entered as clear favourites, led by the legendary Sean Fitzpatrick. In a game that saw the legend of John Olongu stifled by a young Hust van der Westhuizen, everything set up for an iconic finish. Locked at 12 points apiece going into extra time, both teams exchanged a barrage of penalties and drop goals, but it wasn't until the 92nd minute that a young Joel Stransky would send a 59,000-strong Ellis Park crowd into a frenzy. A swift pass from van der Westhuizen set up the Springbok fly half with a clear shot at goal. A few seconds later, and the crowd erupted as the ball sailed through the goalpost and the Springboks announced themselves to the world. The moment could not get any better, aside from the emblematic scene of Nelson Mandela handing the coveted Webb Ellis Trophy to Springbok captain Francois Pienaar, uniting a nation and creating a single memory that lives on in the hearts of a divided country more than 2 decades later. But the Rugby World Cup is not always all shine and glamour. Whilst moments of magic are always remembered and glory shines on those that create it, the Rugby World Cup has conjured up its fair share of heartbreak over the last 4 decades. One such moment happened 4 years later in the same Twickenham Stadium where Australia won their first World Cup. After blundering a comfortable lead, it would be the French duo of Christophe Lamaison and Dominici that would send the All Blacks packing. The feat was almost replicated 8 years later in the Millennium Stadium. Ruled as a fair pass but later reviewed to be forward, it was French centre Yannick Jeuzion who would combine with fly half Michalak for a try in the dying moments that would devastate the All Blacks for a second time. One cannot help but shed a tear with then All Black captain Richie McCaw in the post-match interview that followed. Both these moments were so iconic as they nearly led to civil war between fans in the land of the long white cloud, with calls for heads to roll, coaches to be fired, and the game to have better refereeing standards, all echoed from the pain felt by fans and players alike. The same could be said for the moment a 24-year-old Johnny Wilkinson broke the hands of Wallaby fans by slotting a drop goal in the dying minutes of the 2003 Rugby World Cup. But who could also forget the 2015 quarter-final when a controversial decision by South African referee Craig Joubert led to a Wallaby victory and resulted in a heavy animosity toward the referee as he exited the field of play. In essence, the Rugby World Cup has such enormous power that it could change the history of nations for better or worse. It can generate emotions that are unreal and practically impossible to describe, but there can only ever be one winner. But why does a simple trophy bring out so many emotions? You see, to many this trophy is just another piece of expensive metal, but to players and fans it is a signifying symbol of global domination. While wars are fought with guns on a battlefield, rugby players have nothing more than their heart and determination to spur them on, and hopefully raise the coveted Webb Ellis Trophy when everything is said and done. From players risking their lives to stop a monstrous John Olongu to moments of exceptional brilliance by Jason Robinson, stunning crowds and opposition alike, the Rugby World Cup provides the opportunity for men to turn themselves into heroes. It allows nations to become relevant and gain a foothold in the conversation of who is the best rugby nation in the world. From the likes of Prince Harry congratulating a young Siya Kolisi to national heads of state waiting in anticipation to just touch the World Cup trophy. It has turned into an honour to not only win the tournament, but just be part of the moment. But now we have reached the latest iteration of this iconic tournament. So what should we expect? The year is 2023 and we are once again in the midst of another Rugby World Cup. This time things have changed a bit and little room for error is allowed by players and referees, making this tournament one of the toughest ever to be played. Fans have been buying tickets and gearing up for months, many even reserving their tickets almost a year before the first whistle is blown in Paris. Not only is there plenty of hate in the modern era, but people are divided by the things that shouldn't even matter. Fortunately, the World Cup is sure to unite many nations and bring together people from all walks of life when the first game kicks off on a cold evening in September. You can be sure to see a waterfall of emotions from players and fans. Some will be triumphant, while others will simply have to reevaluate and hit the drawing board. As George Gregan was quick to say in 2003, you have to wait 4 more years. While many people are betting their livelihoods on their favourite teams, thanks to the rise of sports gambling, many others simply enjoy the games with friends. living through the emotional whirlwind and ultimately praying their team will walk away as winners when the curtain falls in Saint-Denis. Now, it's your turn to let us know in the comments how the Rugby World Cup has impacted you and your country. Do you think it will unite nations in 2023, or will it be all-out war on the field of play?